I buried a keg of beer and created the world's first party rock, which is more practical than you think because the ground is cold, and before refrigerators existed, if you wanted to keep something cold, you just buried it. And I'm gonna put that to the test with this McDonald's cheeseburger. We're gonna dig up this cheeseburger and see how it tastes. Well preserved, it looks pretty good. Normal McDonald's. Additionally, humans have fermented some of the world's most premium wines underground in clay pots, and that's because ground temperature is perfect for fermentation as well. So is this ancient method of storing and fermenting food relevant today? The English still serve cask beer at cellar temp, which is more or less the same as ground temp, and all of this got me thinking, should I bury a keg in my front yard and create the world's first party rock? Party rock! The answer to that is yep. The only questions are, 1, how do we actually do it? 2, will it work? And 3, what does ground beer taste like? To answer the first question, yes, there is a real reason to do this, which I'll explain while I get started digging this hole. The most important part of making beer is fermentation, which is where the yeast eat sugar from the barley and turn it into alcohol. If this doesn't happen at just the right temperature, the beer won't taste as good as it could. I'm not sure what the ground temperature is in Asheville, but I know it's going to be lower than room temp, so I also know that fermenting in the ground is going to be better than storing anything at room temperature in my house. Oh dang, it looks like we ran into a root. Someone need to solve this out before I can go any further. Alright, the second reason that fermenting in the ground will be better than ambient air is that when yeast turn sugar into alcohol, they like the temperature to be extremely steady, and I'd be willing to bet the ground temperature is going to be much more steady than the temperature in my house. Alright, I have this hole dug and it looks like we're just above 60 degrees Fahrenheit. This is absolutely perfect for a lot of beer styles, but like I mentioned, English cask beer is stored and served from cellars. Granted, English cellar temp is more like 55 degrees Fahrenheit, but I think we're close enough that I'm going to try and see if I can get away with fermenting an English golden ale and serving it straight out of the ground. If it doesn't work, I can just transfer the beer out of the keg and put it in an actual kegerator, but what would be the fun of doing that if I don't have to? Speaking of the beer, it's time to get started with that. Making beer at home is actually pretty simple. You take grain, add hot water, then boil it, then add hops and yeast. Like I said, the beer we're fermenting for the party rock is an English golden ale that we brewed right in our backyard using an electric brewing system that we design and sell, along with a recipe kit that we also designed. By the way, we reached out to NordVPN for a sponsorship and they said absolutely not, they will not sponsor us after they looked at our audience analytics. Something about the people who watch our videos having search histories that's too bad for even a VPN to fix. I don't know what you guys are looking at, but if you want to support us, just go to our website and check out our gear. Anyway, after the brew day, we ended up with about 5 gallons of liquid to ferment underground in our keg fermenter. So the plan from here is pretty straightforward. Put the keg in the ground, put the liquid in the keg, let the earth do what it's been doing for thousands of years and tap it straight out of that very same hole in the ground. Simple, elegant, and almost foolproof. We knew the goal, but everything in between we kind of just made up as we went, like how deep should the hole be, we guessed. What do we put around the keg to stabilize and insulate it? We guessed. Will it even ferment down there? Well, only one way to find out. Most of the time when you ferment beer in a container, for example a fermentation bucket, you have to transfer from that bucket into a separate container before you can serve it. That's because fermentation buckets aren't designed for serving, and normally you wouldn't ferment in a keg because kegs are designed for serving, not for fermentation. This is because something called a dip tube runs all the way down from the top of the keg to the bottom, and if you tried to serve from a keg that you fermented in, you'd suck up a bunch of gunk and your beer would look awful. However, this is a 6.5 gallon stainless steel keg that we designed to ferment and serve beer. It solves the problem that normal kegs have with something called a floating dip tube. Instead of pulling from the bottom, this dip tube pulls from the top of the liquid as you serve. So you're always drawing from the cleanest part of the beer. This means that you can serve right out of the same keg that you ferment in, which will be perfect for this project. However, this brought up one last problem that we needed to solve with the keg, which is that the keg will be permanently buried in the ground, and we need a way to clean it out in between uses. So we came up with a plan to push liquid through the dip tube using CO2, basically just blast it clean from the inside. Simple enough, except the fitting at the top of the tube wouldn't come off. This one was really stuck on there, and it was the only tube we had. Now, I probably would have given up at this point had I not watched about 1,000 hours of MacGyver as a kid. So instead, I grabbed a butter knife and held it over a torch until it was tight enough to bend it. Then I shaped it into a homemade PEX fitting remover that could pop the fitting loose. It took 45 minutes, but hey, if it works, it works. And it worked. All right, one last problem to solve before we can bury this keg. We're doing this in the front yard. I literally dug the hole like 6 feet from the street where people drive by and walk by constantly. If we leave a keg full of delicious beer sticking out of the ground, what exactly is stopping someone from just walking up and helping themselves? Nothing, really. So as you already know by now, we bought a fake rock, the kind that people use to hide septic lids and stuff like that. So yeah, I just put the rock straight over the hole with the keg in it. And after I was done flattening the ground to keep the rock level, I placed the keg into test fit and decided just to add some sand and bring it up a little higher. Then once I was happy with that placement, I added some more sand around it for insulation and almost instantly regretted it. All right, so that might have been a mistake. The keg wasn't fully sealed yet because we still needed to add the beer, and after dumping sand in and using water to pack it down and rinse it off, I realized that that was probably a huge mistake. Sand and water had almost definitely gotten inside the keg, and on top of that, the sand and water was not draining the way I thought it would. So we dug out 2 drainage tunnels running away from the hole. Then to try and get the sand and dirt out of the keg, we added water and tried to use our method of pumping the liquid out with CO2. We hooked up the CO2 tank and nothing happened. Turns out it was just a fitting issue, and once we sorted that, we were able to push the liquid out. There was still a little bit of sand at the bottom, but you know what? As they say, little dirt don't hurt. And besides, the fermenters people used 1,000 years ago, they were literally made entirely with clay. So I think a couple of grains of sand are not going to cause any trouble for our beer. All that was left to do at this point was to transfer the beer from the kettle into the keg. We just used gravity to drain the liquid from the kettle into the keg. Then we pitched the yeast. Then we put the lid on with the floating dip tube and a spunning valve. By the way, a spunning valve is basically a pressure relief valve that lets you set exactly how much pressure builds up inside. We set ours to 1 bar, which also will naturally carbonate the beer as it ferments. The next day we came back to line the drainage tunnels filled with plastic tubing with some rocks inside because I don't want, mice and stuff living in there. However, as we lifted the rock to check on the keg, we got a little nervous. We really thought fermentation would have started up by now. You know what though? We didn't panic because we figured it was just off to a slow start. And sure enough, that's actually what happened because the very next day fermentation was absolutely ripping. So if you want to build your own party rock, here's what you need. A fake plastic rock, a beer faucet, and a shank. Those come in like 2 different pieces. Doesn't really matter how long the shank is, they come in a lot of different lengths. You need a handle for your tap, and then you need a hose and a little ball lock fitting for your keg. It's pretty simple. As you saw, I just drilled a hole in the rock with a little hole saw and assembled it. Took what, a couple minutes? Well, let's see if it works. Oh, you can't see it at all. This is perfect. Whoa, shit. Dude, this rock's ready to party. Okay, after about 2 weeks of fermentation, it was time to give the yard beer a taste.
I feel like a little kid in this chair.
All right, this is the test here. If it's actually carbonated, beer will come out of this here.
Oh, hell
Boom.
Yeah,
yeah, baby.
dude, I'm excited.
I mean, it's looking pretty clear too, man. Floating dip tube for the win.
So you can see some definite bubblage, lightly carbonated, I would say.
Dude, this is like Cask beer style, man.
Yeah, like perfect, right?
Just note that, I mean, we're pouring this straight out of the ground. Ground to glass, that's what we're gonna call this process,
There you
ground
go.
to glass. Put your rock back and then you can just kick back
no
and
worries.
relax, baby, on your party rock. Aroma,
Mild.
slightly citrusy, a good balance of malt and a little bit of hop bitterness.
Yeah.
Kind of has like a honey vibe to it. You smell
The
some honey
sweetness
in
is
there?
coming through.
Yeah, baby, it smells good. A
Yeah.
little florally,
Yeah.
a little
I can't tell if that's the
honey?
bush or this.
Pairs well
Definitely
with
it has
whatever
the
that
sweet-
is.
Yeah.
Dude, that is fucking 10 of 10.
That is great.
That is solid.
That might be the best thing we've brewed in a long time.
It's pretty good.
I love Cask beer. I love lightly carbonated beers.
Yeah.
I love nitro beers because I can just crush them.
Yeah.
And it's not super boozy. Dude, that is no off flavors, which is crazy.
No. Man, this is so much more flavorful than our normal beer. I bet it's because it's warm.
You get more flavor
Yeah.
and temp. You can taste more when it's warm than cold.
Yeah, people don't understand that. The colder your beer is, like if you go to a bar, they're like, coldest beer in town. It's not always a great thing because a cold beer, it meets the flavor.
I don't know what hops we did, or I don't remember anything. It was 2 weeks ago. But whatever we did is balanced really nicely. Can't remember 10 days ago.
Yeah,
dude.
no, I get it.
Would you do this again?
Oh, we're doing it again as soon as this keg is
Just
empty.
fill another beer right into it?
Honestly, I kind of want to, I don't really know what I want to do. I kind of want to bury it in another keg. We'll plant a beer garden.
Have like 4 kegs.
The problem is this, then we're going to have a bunch of fucking rocks down here. It's going to look dumb as shit.
Let's say they live in an apartment and they can't dig up their front lawn. Should they go to a park?
Yeah, who says you gotta do this in your own yard? You could do this anywhere, man. I'm pretty sure that's what public lands are for.
Yeah.
Is there a law against burying something in the national forest land? Somebody look that up and let us know. We answered the question, what happens when you bury beer in your front yard? What happens when you bury beer in your yard? What happens when you grow beer out of your yard?
Can you grow beer in your front yard?
This is what it looks like when there's beer under your yard. We built a party rock.
You made a beer garden.
Sweet. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.